Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Let's take our attention now to the Sustainable Development Goals championed by the United Nations. Now, the targets for countries of the world to reach these goals is the year 2030, which we're just 6 years away from. There are many goals under this Sustainable Development Goals championed by the United Nations. Actually, there's 17 of them. But let's take a look at number 4, which talks about quality education. Now, the goal is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all, regardless of age, regardless of race. Let's see how that is working out in Nigeria and also in Africa. We're joined virtually by our guest, who happens to be an education expert. He is Dr. Peter Ogudoro. He's an education researcher, career and change coach, and leader of the international award-winning Nigerian teachers community. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us on our exchange.
It's my pleasure to join you. Good morning.
All right. Your profile, I must say, is impressive. Winning the award, Nigerian teachers community. Congratulations on that. I do not know how old that award is, but I like to say congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you hear
thanks
me?
for yeah. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you for the compliment.
Okay. All right, let's look at the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Number 4 actually talks about quality education, ensuring that people of all races and age have access to quality education and lifelong learning opportunities. Now, what is your take on that? The year 2030 is set as the year by which all countries of the world should have achieved that. Is that too optimistic?
Well, certainly. It's a tall order for Nigeria. We're very far away from even starting the journey. We haven't even taken off at all because our leaders are yet to understand and appreciate the indispensable place of quality education for the pursuit and accomplishment of sustainable development. Unfortunately for us, the people who are running Nigeria, especially at the political level, are individuals who train their own children abroad and make decrepit provisions for the children of the poor. And because of their own lack of understanding of how critical good quality education is, especially when it's made available to the masses, they are not able to put in place mechanisms and provisions that will enable us to become globally competitive, using education as our major tool. And today you are calling our attention to the Sustainable Development Goals. They are 17 in all. What you will find if you do my kind of work as an education researcher and a development practitioner is that education is at the center of everything. It lays foundation for the accomplishment of all other goals. Talk about the world's interest in eradicating and eliminating hunger. Education is at the root of it. It's the person who has access to good quality education that will acquire the right skills, the right knowledge, and will be able to set up business or get paid, job that will enable him or her to be able to take care of himself or herself. Or is it trying to take care of our environment? You need to go to school to know the value of that. Or is it technology? Is it innovation? Or is it even partnership? You have to be educated to understand the place of collaboration for societies and how indispensable that is for synergistic interventions in what makes society tick. So unfortunately for us, as we speak, that about 20 million Nigerians, young people, are out of school. And even many of those who are in the school system are actually not learning. That's what research tells us. So you find a Nigerian child who has finished primary school and is still not able to read and write. And many of them who are in secondary school are sitting in places where there's no comfort, and learning in circumstances where there's no laboratory, especially for those of them who would like to become scientists. So their teachers lack the equipment to be able to give them the right type of education. If you go to our universities, things get even worse than you can find it at secondary school level. And now we are imposing, loans for those who really want to go to school, and we say they have to borrow money to go to school. Given our level of development, if we get it right in terms of understanding how important education is for society, we should actually make education available to every Nigerian child for free, and if possible, even feed them while they're in school. But none of those things are happening, and so when you start aspiring to get to 2030 and every Nigerian has access to good quality education, that's certainly a pipe dream. It's a mirage. It's not going to happen.
All right, let's take a close look at this goal, which talks about inclusive and equitable quality education and promotes lifelong learning opportunities for all. First, let's look at quality education. What would quality education mean in today's world?
Yeah, quality education means education that liberates the individual from the shackles of discrimination, that enables the individual to think critically, become an analytical thinker. Quality education would mean education that equips you with the knowledge and skills and values, including the right attitudes you need to be able to identify opportunities and utilize them to manage your own life in a way that makes you fit into the global society and compete favorably for opportunities. Quality education would mean education that enables you to accommodate the idiosyncrasies of others, recognizing that you are not alone in the world and that you alone cannot solve even your own problems. You need other people to be able to get where you need to be. Quality education would mean education that enables you to set up your life in a way that is sustainable, education that makes you realize that when we give you opportunity to serve and you steal all the money that you have access to, you are not only undoing society, you are also undermining your own capacity to be able to live good quality life on a sustainable basis. So quality education goes beyond what Nigerians understand education to deliver for them. Here, education is seen most of the time as a process that gives you school certificate, a process that gives you a degree, a process that gives you a PhD. But you can become very highly educated without even an academic credential. So long as your mind has been opened up to see opportunities and you have got the skills and the knowledge you need to be able to make a difference within your circle of influence, then you are an educated person. But unfortunately for us, Nigerians mistake education for schooling. What we do here most of the time is putting Nigerians through a schooling process, which doesn't necessarily translate to education.
Now, taking it from there, where did that disconnect happen? Taking education for schooling.
Yeah, the challenge with our education system is the fact that it is run by school leaders and policymakers and teachers who themselves have not been properly educated. If you do my kind of work as a teacher trainer, what you find is that the average Nigerian teacher doesn't even know what learning means. As far as they are concerned, when you ask them what is learning, they tell you is acquisition of knowledge. And so that's why there's so much focus on getting children to cram things and pass exams. If you see when WAEC releases its exam results, or JAM releases the UTME result, schools just celebrate the fact that their children are scoring above 300, but they are not concerned about whether those children who are scoring those marks are actually children who can solve practical problems. If you're an educationist, you will know that we have what we call hierarchy of education effects, sold to us by a wonderful researcher called Benjamin Bloom. Nigerians are just stuck at the level of knowledge, which is the very beginning of what education can do for you. But if education is going to make a huge difference, you have to move, take the next steps where you understand what the knowledge you have, and then take the next step where you are able to apply the knowledge and the skills you have to solve practical problems. And take the next step again as you move higher in your development to the level where you are able to do critical analysis and then move on to where you do synthesis, bringing everything together, and finally being able to create new knowledge. You can see that not much of invention is happening in Africa, in Nigeria inclusive. And the reason is simple. We just cram things and we don't make them, become tools for solving practical problems. So the fundamental challenge you have in Nigeria is the fact that the people you call teachers who are standing in classrooms, whether in the private or public sectors of the education system, are people who themselves haven't even received good quality education. So you cannot give what you do not have. And even the policymakers are so much consumed and engrossed in insisting that all the teachers need to do is prepare lesson plans and lesson notes and just go and stand in classrooms and dictate notes for children to copy. They do not care about how much of what children are copying and consuming that they understand and which they can use to solve practical problems. And that's why people finish studying engineering in Nigerian universities and they cannot, somebody is an electrical engineer. You have an electrical problem in your house, it doesn't have a clue as to how to fix it. Most engineers we have turned out from the Nigerian education system. Go and check them. They are all teaching mathematics and physics in the school system. That's not what they went to school to learn. And so we haven't got properly educated policymakers, education policymakers. We haven't got the right teachers who understand what learning means and who have acquired the right skills to be able to do the jobs they need to do. We haven't also equipped the few who really have acquired the skills to be able to deliver good, lessons in classes. We haven't equipped them with the resources they need to be able to do the job of a teacher properly. They also do not have the autonomy teachers need in a modern society to be able to impact children in a way that will make those children finish from the school system and become globally competitive individuals. And so many things have gone wrong, and these are systemic flaws, and they are not problems to solve even in 20 years. And so it surprises me that our leaders do not understand how much of an emergency our situation in education is, and that nobody is in a hurry to begin the conversation that will take us out of where we are.
All right. Good enough that we're having this conversation now. You talked about the teachers themselves, some of them not even knowing what to teach. Now let's look at the curriculum that guides them on what they should teach. A teacher once said that teaching is repetitive. Is that correct, or should it be that way? Looking at the curriculum, did it start from getting it wrong at that stage? And that's why the teachers are making the teaching repetitive, teaching the same thing 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is still being taught right now. And so the approach hasn't changed.
Yes, the reason why many teachers just repeat things is the fact that in the first place, we didn't train them well. Many professors of education in Nigerian universities do not know what the word is talking about regarding teacher training. And so they just do what give to their own students what their own professors gave them. And nobody is questioning what they are doing. In proper societies, every class you finish, you go and do reflection and ask yourself the question, what impact have I made today? And if it's obvious to you that you haven't achieved as much as you intended to achieve, you refine what you are going to do in the next lesson. So teachers here are not taught reflections. They are taught to put all of their energy into preparing lesson notes and lesson plans. Whether they understand what goes into those plans, so long as that's what government has sanctioned, they just repeat things that the institutions have asked them to do. And nobody is paying attention to whether or not these things they are writing on boards, which they get children to copy, are actually translating into transformational experiences for the children. So that's your circumstance, and you have to face it. It shouldn't be so. I do research in education globally. If you go to a place like Finland, one of the countries where I do research as an education researcher, what you find is that the teacher has autonomy, and so teachers there are not too invested in lesson plans the way we are. There, the teacher has autonomy to teach in line with the gifts and the peculiar circumstances of the children and the teacher meets in the class every day. The Nigerian teacher is not brought up by way of training skills, knowledge, and awareness to focus on the peculiar needs of the children standing before him or her. We just tell the children what the government says we should tell them, not what they need to know to be able to function in a modern society. And that's a major challenge. And so, unfortunately, again, for us, we haven't trained these teachers well. So you cannot also give them autonomy when you haven't trained them on how to utilize that autonomy. And that's why I have emphasized in the course of this conversation that our problem is huge, systemic. We haven't laid the foundation. So if you are going to move Nigeria's education forward, you have to first train the people who train the teachers. You have to also first train the people who formulate the policies that even enable us to have faculties of education and put professors in those classrooms. And we need to give them the awareness, starting from the professors who train teachers. But you cannot get good quality professors to train people in education if you are not paying university lecturers well. Here, we don't yet know the value of academics. We think that politicians can solve all our problems, but go and do your research and you will not realize that every society that has moved forward, whether it's America, United Kingdom, Germany, Singapore, South Korea, and now you will talk about United Arab Emirates, where every Nigerian would like to go if the opportunity is there. Go and check them. They all started by first recognizing education as the foundation they have to lay, which becomes the springboard that takes them to every other place they want to get to in terms of national development. But Nigeria is struggling to understand this, and we have struggled with it for decades. And the people running the system in a hurry we should be. And so, my sister Blessing, we are sitting in the place we shouldn't be sitting. Our case is an emergency situation, and we need to find a way to get out of it.
All right, let's look at some of the targets under this goal, which is access to quality and equitable education. All right. One of them talks about ensuring that all girls and boys have access to quality early childhood development and pre-primary education so that they are ready for primary education. And another of them talks about ensuring all girls and boys complete, free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. Now, let me come to the aspect of girls and boys having free, equitable, and quality primary secondary education. Now, in 2018, the data that was available showed that there's a slightly higher enrollment of girls in schools than boys. At one point, it was the girl child education. It seemed like the boys now are lagging while the focus is on girls. Then another thing is about the access to quality early childhood development and pre-primary education so that they're ready for primary education. Looking at the way our school system is run, we know that for that category, that is the nursery and primary education, the private sector has kind of taken over in that aspect. How do you think children in this part of the world are prepared for early education? Are we getting it right? We have crash, we have different levels, and then before the primary education, at the age at which they're enrolled in school, should they be in school at that time? Is there a structure that should make them ready for primary education?
Well, we do not, as a people, understand what we should be doing when we are discussing early childhood education. Our understanding of early childhood education is to get your child to learn how to write letters at the age of 3. And there's a school where I see a signpost advertising the school, trying to attract parents, and the information they have there is that children start writing at the age of 3. When you bring them to this school, that's a wrong objective. A child shouldn't be writing at the age of 3. What do you need to write for? Because the child's mental capacity has not developed to a level where the child needs to be writing letters. And so at that age, what we should be doing is to provide an enabling environment for children to just come to a place that is safe to play, we shouldn't focus on reading and writing at that age. We should focus more on developing their capacity to think, to be critical thinkers, capacity to experiment. And so if you go to, for example, the Scandinavian region, what you find in kindergarten schools, in early childhood, spaces, is that children just come and they don't spend much time in what you call classroom. They spend a significant fraction of their time, up to 60, 70% of it, in open spaces, and they just walk around, play with their mates, fall down, get up, and the teachers monitor to be sure that they are safe. And so they are learning how to relate with the environment, make mistakes along the way, learn what works and what does not work, and develop their thinking capacity in the process. So that's what early childhood education should be focusing on. And then because they are operating in open spaces, they're able to exercise themselves, run, make their bones, get strong, develop that energy and resilience to be able to withstand difficult weather conditions. That's what we should be focusing on at that stage. But unfortunately for us, there's so much focus on reading and writing because we just want children to prepare for exams, and we start giving their parents reports in terms of ranking of their children in schools and giving them their marks in English, in mathematics, in civic education, and those kinds of right from even the age of 18 months. And that's completely unnecessary. A child doesn't need to read and write. We don't even need to examine them. In societies that have got education right, for example, Finland, no child is put through a formal examination until the child gets to late teenage years at the age of 16. That's when they write their first formal examination. Much earlier, they're focusing on, experimenting, exposing them to open spaces, letting them work with their hands, letting them interact with their mates, learning how to work together, as peers, doing collaborative work, developing team spirit, and learning how to try their hands on things and as many things as possible, discovering that not everything you try in life works, and planting seeds and watching them grow, and discovering the principle of delayed gratification in the process. So we haven't started thinking about what early childhood education should be doing for us. That's one side of it. The other side is that the average Nigerian parent also does not have the resources it takes to be able to expose the child to organized and properly orchestrated education at that early stage, because government is not involved in funding it, and most parents don't have the kind of money it takes to take their children to places where you have professionals in early childhood education. So we just managed to carry children into places where you call school, and at the age of 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, and we start worrying the child with cramming, things you write on the board, or you force him to, write things he does not understand. And then you give the parents report at the end of the day. You say, your child is number one in the class. And so parents are happy that their children are beating other children, and they resign themselves to, that kind of celebration, only to discover after the child has finished primary school that the child is not able to cope with anything. That's because nobody has explained these things well to parents. And you also know that parents are also too much in a hurry because we haven't trained them to understand what education means. And so the average school today, especially those in the private sector, doesn't have primary 6. They just skip it and move straight to secondary school because they're in a hurry. They want their children to get to Cambridge overnight. And you ask yourself the question, all these people we are processing through our universities as they graduate, what are they doing? 5 years down the line, they still haven't got a job that is paying them up to 40,000 naira. So what's the hurry about? Why don't we give children ample space, ample time to develop their thinking capacity? Play, really, give them open spaces and provide equipment that will enable them to exercise their bodies and become resilient individuals who can withstand extreme weather conditions, just as we are talking about climate change and the implications of that for society. So from every angle you look at it, Blessing, Nigeria doesn't look like a country that has woken up with respect to what education can do and how education should be done.
Still talking about early childhood education, let's look at other climes. What obtains there? At what age really do children begin school, and what informed that structure?
Yes, we expect parents to be there for their children up to the age of 2. So if a woman is happy to bring up excellent children, the woman should be able to take jobs and do businesses that permit her the opportunity. Working with the husband, who should also be actively involved in this process. Give them the opportunity to interact with the child as much as possible, closely on a daily basis. Let your child see you for up to 8 to 10 hours, really, so that you can transfer some of your values to the child. That's not what you find in Nigeria. At the age of 3 months, even those who are not classified as career women, who are doing, businesses, selling things in the open marketplaces, they carry the child and drop in a place you call crèche, in a place you call nursery school. And the woman or the man who mans the classroom you call a nursery classroom is somebody who has not been trained on how to run a classroom for children who are that age. So such a teacher focuses on how to make these children learn how to read and write. And so the child begins to hate education from early stages, because it's a very troubling experience for a child to start being bothered with how to read and write at that early stage. And so many children today, go and check them out. When the average Nigerian child is about to finish secondary school, he shouts hallelujah. He's happy that he's regularly out of spaces where people impose what he or she has to learn, because most of the things they are learning are not things they want to learn. We are just imposing those things on them. But in climes where things work well, go to the Scandinavian region, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, and Finland, you realize that the child is recognized as an individual, even when he's in the midst of 1,000 children. Every child is an individual, and it's the responsibility of the teacher, working in collaboration with the institutions that have placed her or him in the classroom, to identify the talents, the gifts, and the peculiar needs and circumstances of the child, and make education provisions that address those peculiar needs, so that every child finishes from the school system having the opportunity to develop maximally. That way, we can get everything that the child has to give to society. That's not our case in Nigeria. So we are doing the wrong things. We are not investing appropriately to have the child's gifts manifest. As a matter of fact, the school system has a way of distracting the child from utilizing his or her gifts to the advantage of himself, his family, and society. Because very early in the process, we get the child into just competing with other children. We don't need to compete with other children. You compete with yourself. That's what people do in proper societies. Here, the Nigerian child competes with other children in the class, but when education is properly done, the child competes with himself or herself by way of trying to, in the next term, exceed what he or she has achieved in the current term. But what makes us happy in Nigeria is that our child has done better than other children. And we forget that every child, is an individual, and we need to make provisions that enable the child be treated as an individual, and giving the child the opportunity to have his or her gifts and talents and potential adequately harnessed to the advantage of himself, family, and the larger society. So those are challenges that are there. And it doesn't look to me like anybody in government understands this. And if they don't understand it, why are we expecting the school owners, who are largely businessmen, especially those in the private school sector, businessmen and women, why do we think that they're the ones who are going to fix what has gone wrong in our education system?
Okay, let's take a look at some of the targets. Now, this time it doesn't have to do with children, but it has to do with adults. So this one says, by 2030, ensure equal access for all women and men to affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education, including university education. Another part or fit says, increase the number of youth and adults who have relevant skills, including technical and vocational skills for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship. Now, the emphasis is on vocational skills, technical skills for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship. In Nigeria, at one time, we had technical colleges. Some of them are still functional. Some of them have been converted to regular schools. There seemed to be a distraction away from technical education, vocational skills. When people want to acquire vocational skills these days, it's on a private level. They do that by themselves, go maybe enroll in some center and acquire the skills for themselves. What happened to the structured vocational education, structured technical education that Nigeria had? And what has been the implication of that discontinuation of technical and vocational education on the economy?
Well, you can't get parents to invest in keeping their children in technical schools if you are not an industrialized country. What the technical skills you're acquiring enable you to, handle welding properly, enable you to fix air conditioners, enable you to work in factories where things are being manufactured. We don't make anything in Nigeria. We're a consumer nation. We import everything we use. Look around you in your studio. There's hardly anything in your studio that was made in Nigeria. They are all imported. So we haven't got places where children can go and work after they have acquired technical skills. So it's a wrong objective. Education doesn't work in isolation of other developments in society. You need to be industrializing. You need to be creating factories. What Nigeria has done is to jump ship. We move straight from agrarian society to service society. We didn't get it right by way of moving from agrarian to industrialized society. So we don't have places that can collaborate with schools that offer technical education to ensure that what children are learning, they have places where they can go and test them. Even the few young people who are settled for polytechnic education, go and ask them the experiences. They will tell you that it's difficult for them to find places where they can do industrial training because all the factories have shut down. How many textile companies do you have in Nigeria? Okay. And don't you hear about Unilever and several other organizations shutting down, and leaving the country and closing their manufacturing, facilities? So if you ask a parent to send his child to technical school, when the child finishes technical school, what is the child moving to, really? So the reason why grammar school is popular in Nigeria is the fact that if you finish from a grammar school, a regular secondary school, you're able to go to university and get a degree, and with your degree, you can become a politician. And when you become a politician, you get easy money, to take care of yourself and to get around the world, with your girlfriends, and if you are more morally upright, with your wife and your immediate family members. So people are guided in their investment by what they see in society. You can't be preaching to people to invest in technical education when there's nothing they are going to move on to with that technical skills by the time they graduate from the places where those kinds of skills are provided. That's one. Two, and more critically, we haven't got the teachers who can provide the education and the training you need to give to people in these kinds of spaces. Apart from not having the manpower, the capacity to do that, we also lack the technology it takes to train children to acquire these skills that all of us think they should acquire. We don't have the technology in those spaces. All the few things we're able to acquire at the time we thought we should move in that direction, they have all gone down. They have all become decrepit. They are not functional. Nobody is servicing them. Maintenance culture is completely, at a level that is despicable and scandalous in our country. So, my sister, that's why the whole idea of technical education cannot work. We don't have what children can move on to after they've acquired the skills. Some of them who have even managed to go and learn, welding and those kinds of other things. Who is going to employ them? Which factory? Where are those factories? Okay, and then how much do you pay people who go through those kinds of experiences? Society looks down on them. When you go to a technical school, the assumption your peers and parents of other children make is that it's because you are not very smart. That's why you didn't go to do the regular chemistry, physics, biology, economics, government, and commerce and accounting to be able to go to university. Nobody wants to be, labeled a dumb person. Nobody wants to be labeled an idiot. And so you want to do what every other person is doing. So we need to do proper, public relations for education in all its ramifications, so that we recognize that every child is an individual and we have got different skills, diverse skills, and that all of those skills are useful. And we need to promote dignity of labor, that whatever you are doing, like you are in that studio, you are not working alone. We need to get people to always know, by way of, for example, your end credits, that this presenter, Blessing, has not worked alone. There's a producer behind everything we are doing, and there's a cameraman who ensures that my image is clear and that my voice is heard well, outside. There's a director who is making everything, get across to the people who are enjoying our conversation. That is not the way Nigeria works. Nigeria works in a way that makes that it's like a zero-sum game in every space. So you become a politician, you make all the money, and every other person is poor, and we all have to come to your home to feed. You give us money to pay our children's school fees, you give us money to buy clothes, you give us money to eat. And that's not the kind of society that will make people want to go to technical schools. That's not the kind of society, that will make people encourage their children to do what other people are not doing.
All right, as a wrap up, a report says that less than 10% of all children with disabilities under 14 in Africa attend school, which takes us to the next target that says that it is part of the goal that there should be facilities that cater for people with disability in schools. So it says that build and upgrade education facilities that are child, disability, and gender sensitive, and provide safe, inclusive, and effective learning environments for all. So looking at this target, upgrading education facilities that are child, disability, and gender sensitive, and the report says that less than 10% of children with disability in Africa actually attend school. How can that be corrected, even as the world, including Africa, looks at attaining this goal by the year 2030? Recall that we are in 2024, just 6 years away.
Well, I have tried to make the point directly or indirectly in the course of this conversation that we need to do public relations for education. And that public relations should not begin and end with what we tell the teachers who run the classrooms. Many parents are ashamed of their children who are living with some disabilities, who are physically challenged. And some of them had those children, lock them up, and they don't want even their neighbors to know that they have got such children. What we know, if you do my kind of job, is that you are blind does not mean that you cannot talk, and that you are dumb does not mean you cannot see. And somehow, I think what God does is that when, for any reason best known to Him, He takes away any function from you. He elevates the rest of your organs to perform in ways that are amazing. So you find blind people who do very well and finish with first class even when they go to university. One of the states in Nigeria, I think it's Abia State, has somebody without hands. His two hands were cut off, I think somewhere in Sierra Leone during the Liberian, Civil War. And but now the governor there has picked the person up because the governor has monitored that person over the years and discovered that this person's brain works optimally. That guy has become an international celebrity, So unfortunately, and that's because he was lucky to come from a background that enables him to recognize that not having my hands does not mean that I cannot make a difference in society. But not every child is that lucky. So we haven't really done enough awareness interventions that help our parents to understand that their children should be allowed to operate in public spaces. So much of what you are seeing here in terms of children who live with disabilities not being in school system is not necessarily as a result of the fact that government doesn't want them to come to school. Even their parents are not proud of them. And that's very unfortunate. So we need to educate parents to recognize that God, puts us in circumstances that He chooses, and for purposes that will serve us well and also benefit society. So if we look closely, we'll find out why God probably has denied us certain, functionalities. And if we look well, we discover where he has moved, our gifts to. And if we use them well, society will benefit. So that's one way to look at that. Two, we are poor. In Nigeria, we have this 50-50 kind of arrangement where about 50% of our children are in the public school system, while the other, fraction are in the private school system. The average private school owner doesn't think it's a reasonable investment to make provisions for the child who is living with any disability, because sometimes what you find is that it's only one or two children who have this kind of a challenge, and you will need like 100 million to make provisions that will cater for them. Government doesn't support private schools in any way. In the Scandinavian region, governments support private schools. As a matter of fact, in terms of ownership, is just a name. Government provides all the funding and gives you guidelines on how to run the system. Here, that's not the arrangement. Here, a private school is strictly a business. So you don't want to spend 100 million to make provisions for only two children. Who is going to pay school fees for them? Parents don't have that kind of money. We are poor. Our per capita income is 2,000. United Arab Emirates, that's a country that was created only in 1971, has per capita income that is over $80,000. Okay, so you are poor. School owners don't find any incentive to make this investment because government is not interested in what they are doing. Government is even taxing them every day. Going there, school inspectors go there asking for different kinds of things and extracting and extorting money from them. So you haven't put anything in place, really, that can enable us to move in that direction. And beyond the school system, look at the spaces where all of us function. How many banks have entrances that have made provision for people with disability to come into their banks and do transactions? You don't find up to 2% of branches of banks having provisions that enable somebody on a wheelchair to come into the bank to do a transaction. So everywhere you look, the child living with disability is at a very big disadvantage. And we are in a modern society where that shouldn't be the case. If you are as lucky as I am and you have been able to travel to countries where people know the value of education, people who are blind don't even need anybody to walk with them in the streets. In Sweden, for example, the traffic lights are configured in such a way that a blind person has been trained to know the sound to hear, to be able to cross the road, and he or she will not be hit by a train or a car or any other moving vehicle. And walking alone with the technology just
on early exchange. It just happens that we're already out of time, and we should have more time to handle this discussion. But we'll find another time to look at some other areas of the SDG number 4, which talks about ensuring equitable access, inclusive and equitable quality education for all. We thank you so much for being part of the show today.
It's my pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the day too.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.